Okay, good evening. Good evening, everyone, to another episode of Dragon Stories. This time we're with my Canadian friend Jonathan K, who I met in my master's program. And from day one, we're like, "You're Canadian, I'm Canadian, cool, we're friends." And then what was even cooler was that he plays the saxophone. I'm like, "Whoa, we're double friends." And then I found out he also played the bamboo flute and the Esraj, and we also, like, I got to experience India for the first time with Jonathan. I met him in Calcutta, and I got to meet one of his gurus, his Esraj gurus in
Hmm.
Shantiniketan. And so what we kind of wanted to cover this time around is not only like he'll be playing the Esraj later on, but this beautiful kind of a system of transferring knowledge from guru to the student that's still alive in India. And it's not really commercial based. It's not like you have to pay $100 per lesson. It's kind of like, the student and the guru agree to a transfer of knowledge and a serious relationship. And it are you I'm not sure, is it for a lifetime, or is it like, I know you spent 10 years in India learning this rush from two different gurus. And so I guess, like, you can take it off from here. Like, how long is the relationship? Is it a lifetime? And how all of that works.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Kat. It's
Mhm.
great to be here and discuss these really great ideas and really important things in my life. Yeah, I mean, I think that traditionally there is something called a guru band, which is like you would tie. Actually, it would be something similar to this, where you'd tie something around the disciple's wrist. That would be one of the traditional rituals. And I think, from what I understand, that's kind of binding and bonding the guru and the shishya, the disciple, into like a lifelong journey, together. In my case, um, I think, well, my main or first guru, Shantanu Bhattacharya, who's a singer from Calcutta. He's a I learned for him. I lived beside him for many years, and I learned the vocal music of North India, and I applied it to the saxophone. And that was my main work, my main goal, and the main thing that I was doing every day, all day, for those about I think about 5 years, 6 years,
Is
and
is
then
that
I
the one, like, we were at his house and he's an Aurobindo disciple, or
That's
he's
right,
a student?
exactly,
Uh-huh.
exactly. Yes, indeed. So I learned raga music really, as a form of integral yoga from him and his family. And integral yoga is the type of yoga that was kind of created by Sri Aurobindo and the mother, Mira Alfasa. And they had a spiritual partnership, almost a spiritual collaboration. And that they were centered in Pondicherry, India, in the south of India. But Sri Aurobindo, Aurobindo Ghosh, his name was actually from the Bengal. And so he has roots in the Bengal as well. And so there are a lot of people that follow and are disciples of Sri Aurobindo and the mother and follow integral yoga who are in the Bengal. And I happened to show up in India for the first time, and I sat at the feet of Shantanu G. We would say G is the respect marker there that you add at the end of the name. And he had two massive pictures of and on an altar of who turned out to be Sri Aurobindo and the mother. And so that's how
Mhm.
I was directly kind of pulled into their orbit through music. But in the end, I did well. First of all, when I first learned from him, I had never been to India before. I came with my brother Andrew and my best friend Justin, and we sat as a trio with him and learned the basics of raga music. But we didn't know what a guru was or what that meant or how to even engage in that idea as foreigners. And it only
Wait,
really hmm,
I just want to ask, how did you find out about Shantanu?
it was quite a chance encounter in a way. Our good friend, a tabla player, an Indian Canadian, who's played on actually quite a few of my CDs, Ravi Nempali.
Mhm.
He recommended that we contact one of the main Gurukul schools in Calcutta, And a gurukul is where the gurus would live, and the students also live with them, basically beside them. And this school is renowned all over India for being for housing some of the greatest maestros, living maestros of the North Indian music tradition, and also being able to cultivate some of the best talent of the next generation. And my guru Shantanuji, he had actually attended that school for a couple years, and he was working there in some capacity, not as a full guru at the time, but he was working. Um, I forget his role at the time, but he was
But
mentoring some students.
how did you go from jazz to being interested to Northern Indian music?
Yeah, this is
Like, that's quite the leap, you know, from
it is great question.
Coltrane to
Right, right. We're sort of starting the story in the middle, if
yeah,
which
I
is
was like, wait a minute. Back up.
right, right. So being from Toronto, I grew up around jazz music because Toronto has a very good jazz community here, and my uncle happened to be a part of the jazz community. He's a world-class trombone player. His name's Alistair Kay, and he, as young as 16 years old, because he was really, I would say almost like a prodigy of trombone in many ways. When he was 16 and 17, he was playing with Ella Fitzgerald and Frank Sinatra and any kind of big names that would be on tour that would come into Toronto and needed a big band. He was really one of the main calls for that. So he spent his whole career playing music with legends. I
Dean
mean,
Martin too. He played with Dean Martin.
I don't think I've heard that name from him. No, I don't think so.
But
But
Frank Sinatra?
yeah, he did something recently with Aretha Franklin, and even he played with the Who
Wow.
recently. So he's a very virtuosic musician. He plays in many different styles, and he really embodied, so he was a mentor for me and really embodied a musicality and a virtuosity that I really looked up to. And so I grew up going to pit orchestra shows with him and big band concerts. And so I sort of grew up as a jazz musician, really. I took to saxophone rather than trombone because it seemed to be a little bit easier to play as a grade 6 or grade 5. But
Mm.
I thought that saxophone was also a very versatile instrument. You could play rock and roll, you could play funk music, you could play jazz, you could do a lot of things with saxophone.
Mm.
Less classical music, but I wasn't so interested in classical music. A trombone is also, it's in orchestral music. And so there's a little bit more potential to be in the classical and jazz world, which my uncle was. Him and my aunt toured with the Royal Winnipeg Ballet when they were kind of becoming professionals as well. And so they were crossing over classical, Western music and jazz, but my interests were more in jazz. And I was very influenced by certain musicians who were looking to the East for different types of knowledges, different types of musical knowledge, and expressive knowledge from these cultures, also spiritual knowledge. And at a certain point in time, after playing jazz and having some, I would call them mystical experiences in playing jazz with friends and collaborators, and sometimes in concerts, sometimes in practices or rehearsals, I would be taken out of time and space altogether into this tone world, to use a phrase of one of my great influences and great musicians who's alive today, William Parker. But this tone world was really, it displaced me from my kind of normal and habitual way in which I experienced the world and myself. And I didn't have any ways to understand what was happening in those spaces. And so I started being a little bit more inspired by some of these musicians who were looking to spirituality. And I thought that there was a resonance in their music and my experiences. And so names like John Coltrane and Alice Coltrane became very important to me. I looked up to them as musicians. Their music deeply inspired me, but also their lives were very, very, they both of them took up very seriously Eastern spirituality, and John Coltrane was actually supposed to learn from Ravi Shankar, a great sitar player from North India. But John Coltrane passed away when he was too young, and in 1967. And so he left us these questions. And I feel like my life is kind of picking up some of these questions that John Coltrane first started asking, which was really, how do you bring in other types of musical influences, other types of spiritualities, other types of ways of relating to the cosmos through music. And jazz, I think, has always been a place that has housed these types of questions. Jazz, I'm working on my dissertation right now with East-West psychology at California Institute of Integral Studies, which where we met.
Yeah.
And one
Great
of the
school.
yeah, totally. And one of the questions that my PhD mentor Debashish Banerjee has helped me see is that jazz has what we're calling an integrative impulse. There's this kind of impulse or this drive to kind of bring in things from the outside. And so in this case, it was really like fold in aspects of Indian music and spirituality. And so I
Mhm.
feel that my life, I started really being inspired by this question, and it took me to India, and that's where we started our conversation. Is me in India, sitting at the feet of the man that would become my guru. I would have to
Right.
learn what that means, even what is a guru, what's the relationship entail, what kind of what's the mode of learning, and at a certain point, it just I was being so selflessly given so much knowledge from my guru and experience, many like long days of
Wait,
sitting with
Jonathan.
him. Hmm.
Can we back up a little bit? When you were talking about the tone world, like I wanted you to expand on that because it's kind of it's like a parallel. Like in the 60s, a lot of people were taking LSD, right? And through the LSD, for some reason, they were seeing Shiva and Ganesh, and they're like, why are
Sure.
we seeing Shiva and Ganesh in our LSD experiences? Like we don't understand what's going on. And that brought them to India. And because there was a huge wave of Westerners coming to India, and then they brought the gurus back with them. We had the huge yoga wave in the West, in Canada, and so
Right,
that was
right.
great because it brought the Indian culture to us, and it kind of like I think the West was ready, the consciousness was ready to evolve and go like up a notch. And but it's interesting that the musicians were
Hmm.
going through a wave of their own as well, like through music, like they
Sure.
were also coming to India. But I was like, what do you mean by tone world? Are you saying you entered into a space where there is like no time, like time froze or something?
I mean, I definitely can't answer that question so directly with language, because it that's I think the we're kind of on the border of being in a mystical experience where language really can't express it. Sort of the ineffable is present in an experience like that. It kind of ruptures your world. It ruptured my world in a way that I couldn't easily make sense of what was happening. And so language and the concepts that I had to understand that were inadequate. So we can try to express it. And I would say that yes, one of my experiences was of a different type of time. Maybe it wasn't that there was no time, but it was just a completely different sense of time. It generally it would move very slowly, meaning or sorry, it would yeah, it would be slowly or fast. I'm not sure. It would change, but I think that it's clear to say that I would close my eyes and go into playing a solo with the band, and we would kind of co-create this music. And I would finish playing, my solo, and I would open my eyes and I would have no idea if it was 5 minutes or 25 minutes that we just played. So it
Wow.
was really a very different, it was kind of like a decentered world where the normal ways, like the rational function, the how we synthesize reality and we make sense of things, that was completely ruptured or decentered. And so I call it the tone world. I think that William Parker is also a kind of a contemporary revolutionary, musical revolutionary, and mystic too, I would
Mhm.
say. And I think the tone world, it just helps to evoke the fact that you are not at the center of it, but you merge with musical becomings, musical
Wow.
phrases and rhythms, and it kind of it kind of creates a whole new world that's
So
that's
it's almost like you're
hmm.
coming out of the 3D realm of like language and this physical realm more into a pure realm of vibration.
Well said, well
So,
said. That would
so
be
like
yeah.
so like the consciousness is more expansive because kind of like you know what they say in the Bible, in the beginning there was the word. And then when you have Debashish talk about the beginning of creation, in the beginning there was sound. And then the Vedas say Om was the first sound.
Right.
And out of sound came the other elements, earth and fire. And so, but before, before any of this was created, the material realm, there was just like the basics, just sound.
Right, right. Well, and even if you think about it as vibration, then that the vibration sound is what we can hear, is vibration that we can hear, right? But we can see vibration like like in higher vibrations, I guess, like if you get into the physics, which isn't my speciality, but like um in terms of X-rays, which would be very, you can't see them, but they exist. They're very long wavelengths. And then really high and fast wavelengths, vibration would be, I think, infrared. So like we hear in a certain bandwidth of vibration, we see in a different bandwidth, because what we're seeing is still vibration. We just our perceptive organs, we've developed different perceptive organs for different bandwidths, really, in a way, or different ways of sensing within a certain bandwidth. Maybe that's more accurate,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think, and so what you bring up is absolutely is beautiful. And I remember listening to um, a John Coltrane album called Om, and him and his saxophone partner in that band was called Pharoah Sanders, who was a jazz legend, and a revolutionary, and a spiritual, a spiritual musician to the highest degree. He just passed away recently, but yeah, they're reading from the Bhagavad Gita, and they're chanting out Om Om, and they're playing music with
Wow.
that. And so
Coltrane went from, that's awesome.
yeah. And so I guess why is that important is that for me, I started looking, well, what is this that they're chanting? What is this Bhagavad Gita book, and where is it from, and what does it mean? And so, yes, it's from the Indian culture. It's one of the central texts, especially of Sri Aurobindo's yoga. And then you get into saying, well, what is Om then? Why is this so important, and why are they chanting it? And we get from the Mandukya Upanishad, we get the whole metaphysics of vibration. It's a proposition. It's saying, well, Om, the whole cosmos, like you just said, is vibration. That
In the
syllable.
beginning, there was the word. And I just
That's
learned that
right.
the reason why it's Om is because you don't need a tongue to say it. Oh, it's
Om.
ah, and you don't need a tongue. So it's,
That's
and the
okay.
other thing I just learned is that if you listen carefully to every sound in nature, like water, birds, there's always Om is in every sound. It is the basic of
Mhm.
every
The building block
nature.
of the
But yeah,
universe,
it's like the
right?
building block of everything.
Right, right. Yeah. And so it's the way that I would look at it is that, it's a proposition for us to say, okay, if what is how can we experience this? What kind of reality does this lend itself to? And how is it as experienceable? And so I was already engaged in music as my life at that point, going as deep as I could into music, and trying to find the music of the soul, or the heart, of the spirit. And so when I came across this Upanishad talking about Om, it was like, okay, it was an invitation to try to see, well, what does this do? It's not necessarily an absolute uh, it's a proclamation. This is the way that reality is. It's just saying, well, can you experience something along these lines? If you can, maybe it's helpful. And that's the way that I've been looking at all of the wisdom texts from India for any part of the world. I would say it's not telling us the way that reality is. It's an invitation to experience something different, something new, something that can help you exceed yourself. And so I found that all of this was very it really inspired my musical journey to the core.
Wait, I want to say something about that. Mm. So I get invited to a Deva Premal concert, and I might have told you this story. And I don't
Mm,
know who Deva Premal is. I'm just like, okay, cool. She does mantras. I love mantras. I'm definitely gonna go. Don't know anything about the Gayatri mantra, but as soon as I hear it, I just start crying. I felt like
mm,
I was coming home. I was like, what is this?
mhm,
And then moving along, like just a month or two later, my first class, at CIS is the Upanishads course. And
Hmm.
then I'm learning that the Gayatri mantra is mentioned like 20 times in the Upanishads. And then it's the oldest prayer, one of the oldest prayers. Some say 3,500 years old, some say 5,000. And I'm just like, holy crap, the synchronicity of this.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
that's beautiful.
and the beauty of vibration and how it, how it just kind of, I don't know what the word is, how it works on your brain and
Right, right.
whole body.
Yes, yes. I had a very similar experience when I heard Ravi Shankar's album Chants of India. And Ravi Shankar was a part of this cultural revolution that you're speaking about. He was very much important in bringing Indian music to the West because of his because he was basically the guru of George Harrison. And George Harrison did actually he got tied by Ravi Shankar, the Guru Band. And
Oh,
so to formalize that bond, and Ravi Shankar too, like was kind of the most famous and like kind of the one of the really main spokespeople for the culture of India, for the music of India all over the world, because he was embedded in this counterculture. And he, at a certain point, he he didn't resonate with the hippie culture at the time, where he would be playing his concerts at these big festivals, Woodstock, for instance, and others, and in San Francisco. He would do concerts there as well, but he didn't necessarily resonate with the intoxication, because from his culture that wasn't helpful. And so he wanted to separate that, and he wanted to also bring in the Vedic roots of the culture from his perspective. And so he did this album called Chants of India, and I recommend um, anybody listening to check it out. It's using the Vedic mantras, as he brought in people that do that like very, very deeply, are very realized in their chanting. And the Gayatri mantra is on there as other ones. And it's so beautifully arranged. It has such a spiritual vibration to it. Like it changes the atmosphere. I found it did for me. And it really inspired me to kind of to go much deeper into to the spiritual roots of the music, the raga music.
yeah. Just a quick question. Ravi Shankar, did we see him in Pondicherry at that concert or no? That wasn't him.
No, no, Ravi Shankar passed away a little while ago.
Oh,
But yeah.
well, okay. What I wanted, because I remember you were telling me one time that when you play the Esraj, that it's a meditation of its own. So it's kind of like you have the monks that are chanting Om all day long, or you have people doing the Gayatri mantra morning and night. And so, you know, some say that mantras are the best for this age of Kali Yuga, because it, you're more quickly to remember where you come from, that you come from the spiritual realm. But then I was like, I always thought only mantras can do that. But then I remember you were telling me one time that when you play the Esraj,
Hmm.
is that the because mantras are vibration, but then so is, in the beginning there was vibration. And you were saying that something about you feel energy moving, or your chakras are like the
Hmm.
playing the instrument is very similar to chanting mantras, because both are
Right.
vibration. And I never even thought that music can be the same. For some
Right. Right.
reason, it just didn't.
Right. Well, and this goes back to like the metaphysics is helping you realize your goals. That would be a clear way of stating what I was trying to say earlier. And this is based on Debashish's kind of methodology that he teaches integral yoga and yoga psychology through. But really, that idea that you just shared would be housed and kind of made propositionally possible through the metaphysics of India. It's been developed there because they've had goals to try to become cosmic, to try to become like a god, or to try to become the divine itself. And so music would be the ritualistic interface that you can design and tune yourself to the cosmos in a way. And that would be one way of talking about it. And so a chakra could be thought of, and there are some people or some traditions that would say that each chakra is a certain note, for instance. And once you arrange, you realize each note, and then you can put them into musical sequences. then your body becomes like a melody, if you will take the analogy farther, right? Maybe it's not an analogy. It could be, it can be a reality. I would say that that would be closer to a reality of mine, because like you said, as I started practicing this type of music, it's really, you're tuning yourself, first of all, to the tanpura, which is the drone instrument.
Mhm.
And that drone is giving you a bass to tune to. It's fixed pitch in terms of it doesn't modulate to other key centers. It's a drone. It sets the music in one mode. It's the canvas in which you'll play the raga on. And so I got one of the larger instruments that you would pluck. It has 4 strings, and you sing to it. And that was really the first time I started to feel like I was tuning my body to this instrument. And
Wow.
and so the ragas really became, my wisdom guides, or my spiritual guides in a way. And I would learn the raga from my guru, Shantanu, we've mentioned him, or my Esraj guru, Abir. And it would be tuning yourself to the guru in sense of becoming open and receptive to the teaching of the guru. So you're tuning yourself to them. You're tuning your instrument to the raga, for instance. So when I had the Esraj, it has 21 strings. I had to tune the Esraj to that raga. You had to tune your ear and your perceptive capabilities to hear all the subtleties of the raga, because they're very, very deeply subtle. And so as a foreigner who didn't grow up with this music, it took me many years to really deepen my sense of hearing, so I could hear the depth of expression and nuance. And then in terms of you're tuning your body to be able to resonate with the instrument. So the instrument is resonating while your body is also a resonating chamber. And so I found that when I was doing sometimes yoga, sometimes a lot of pranayama at times, and chanting and singing, I found that I was kind of opening my body and tuning my body to this music. And when and then the last step, I would say, or one of the other steps, would be you're really tuning yourself to the raga, so that the raga can you'd say the raga descends. The raga comes, in one way to think about it, you would channel this deity that we call the raga. In another way, you would say you're possessed by the raga, meaning if you become kind of transparent yourself, you kind of surrender to the raga, and it kind of acts through you. That would be another type of phenomenology, or another type of experience that is part of the traditions. And then the last stage I was going to say is you tune yourself to the cosmos itself, and you would look at the raga as just one of whole multiplicities of personalities, of divine personalities. That is really one divinity, one the absolute, radically infinite. Some people would call that God, or the divine. And so all of these kind of layers is that's how I learned music, as a form of sadhana, meaning spiritual practice. And so I think that the analogy of tuning is a very good one, because if we're accepting the metaphysics, the worldview that all is vibration, then that means that every relationship that we have is a relationship of resonance. How do we resonate with that other person, with that instrument, with that recording, with that cultural event, and it's really I think Sri Aurobindo sums it up well when he says all problems of existence are fundamentally problems of harmony. And again, we're expanding this kind of musical worldview, this, you could say, a sonic ontology, to be technical in one way. It's about that relationality as resonance. You could also say is a form of harmony. If you're not in harmony with something, whether it's let's say you're not feeling harmony with yourself, you will get sick. If you're not in harmony with your environment, you'll maybe get sick too. But you need to, this maybe goes more to Chinese thought, but it's sort of like the feng shui of existence in a way, like being able to position yourself in good places where you're in resonance with, but you're also cultivating a good harmony, so that you can continue to realize your goals.
That's interesting you say that, because like I'm here in Lviv and it's been pretty difficult. And no matter how I might be doing mantras outside or inside, there's still a cloud of fear, And then so sometimes
Mhm.
I'm like, no, everything will be fine. And I like try it, just hold peace in every cell of your body. And there's sometimes, I'll do the Shiva mantra at night, come home. No, everything is going to be great. And then the next day I crash and I'm just like, oh no, what if World War III does happen and I'm the crazy one? So I go back and
Oh,
forth, and it's not easy, and I'm like,
no.
it's like I put myself into a challenge, and it's difficult. It's not easy to stay happy. Like, for example, in Peru, where you could buy fresh juice for $1 and you're in the mountains and you can go to the hot springs, and like you're just
Mhm.
surrounded by beauty and peace, and it's so easy to be happy. But here, not so easy. And then, so then, when you were saying, how do we resonate with each other? And then, like, this whole war is a conflict. And I keep picturing, like, anytime I pray, I'd be picturing everybody just needs to talk. Like, this got way out of hand. And then, America got involved, and then Biden wasn't talking to Putin. And I just kept visualizing, no, the three of you need to sit down and sort this out, kind of like what you were saying, resonate. You need to
Mhm.
begin resonating with each other and figure this out, because no one wants this war. And yeah, so it's kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Not
No,
an easy time.
yeah, I can't imagine. I think that, and this is where I think, Sri Aurobindo, for instance, he looked to yoga initially because he was a freedom fighter fighting the British, and so the whole, I guess, the whole reason he looked to yoga was for worldly problems. He was, and I think that this is an interesting and a very important way of thinking about yoga, for instance, in this day and age, is that yoga in the past and in certain schools is more interpreted as you kind of purify yourself through practices or austerities, or rituals, and then you get out and you would merge with the transcendent, or you would have samadhi outside of, it's sort of like that mystical experience. It's like you're in a different time and a different world. But how do you integrate that, first of all, the profound experience, um, into our waking and daily life? And so looking to the technology of yoga, to use that word, in a broad sense, it's really like the idea of Sri Aurobindo was asking, well, how can I know absolutely what to do? So how can I gain certainty of absolute knowledge, so that I can, so because life and death, it's a matter of life and death here. And then another question, is how can I gain power to overcome my oppressors? And so I think that this is a yoga of the world in a way. It's not a privileging the transcendent or getting out of the world. It's really, um, you know, drawing upon the kind of the radically infinite potential of the transcendent of the cosmos in a way, but really trying to cultivate yourself so that you can first of all have goals, like you have a goal of saying, no, I need to spend time doing mantras, because this is a goal that I have to help the world situation right now, this conflict. And I think that yoga it's definitely helped me and many others in this worldly life of making this the like life divine, which is really Sri Aurobindo's main work. So I'm just trying to keep Sri Aurobindo in the mix here, but
No, no, exactly. No, I wanted to talk about Aurobindo. He's my hero, and I need to read more of his texts, because and like most people don't know about Aurobindo, but what I wanted to say, I don't know his
Mhm,
whole story. But I only know this was that he was an activist before Gandhi, and he started to move India against colonialism, and that's why they threw him
mhm,
in jail. And
mhm,
in jail, he met Krishna, I
mhm.
think,
Yep, yep.
something along those lines. And when he came out of jail, he's like, I no longer want to be an activist. I want to open up an ashram. And he,
But the thing I would say is that that was his way of becoming the most potent activist that he could. That was a
exactly,
form of activism. It wasn't a
exactly,
recluse from the world saying, I can't fight this. He just changed the level in which he was engaging with the problem.
exactly. Like, instead of just escaping to a cave, it's kind of like, as they say, as above, so below. But a lot of people say we're supposed to bring heaven to this world. Like, if this
Mhm.
is the mid world, and there's 7 realms above and 7 realms below, and some of us here, like, bring the light. So when this war began, I was in Peru, and we were in the mountains celebrating that COVID ended. Okay, maybe the world can come back on 2/22/22. Maybe the world can come back to some sort of normal. 2 days later, the war begins in my country, and I'm like, in
Oh,
my birth country. I'm like, are you kidding me? I
yeah,
mean, we
yeah.
just went through hell like for 2 years in lockdown, and people died, and now this, and I just couldn't seem to move on with my life. I just couldn't. I felt like I was feeling the pain of the Ukrainian people. And then I came to California. I was doing a lot of praying, and along the beach, because I feel that it's powerful when you do mantras by the ocean, and then the ocean carries those prayers. And
Mm,
what I love about mantras is
beautiful.
that, especially if I do it without any distraction, without any towers, without any people, and the beach is like one of the best places, my brain completely shuts down, and everything just kind of, and then only
Mm,
then do I feel like have merged, not completely, but a lot closer to the consciousness, or I'm closer to listening to my soul and my heart. And I feel that from that point we can actually create change from this
beautiful.
quiet place, right? Where there's no
Right.
ego distractions here. And then everything was like telling me, no, I need to go to Ukraine. And people are like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to stand in front of the tank? Like people were making fun of me. Like, how do you think you're going to stop a war? And I'm just like, look, I think each person can make a difference, even if it's just a little bit of light, even if it's okay. So I'm doing mantras here at night, and that's just elevating the consciousness just a little bit to increase the number of people that go to church by just 15%. And then the next week it's by 20%, and you have more and more people that are prescribing to hope and peace than living
Hmm.
in fear mode. And then more and more people are turning off the TV. Let's just say, it's worth it. It's worth a try. And this is what I want, like, everyone to remember, is that each person can make a difference. I mean, look at what Gandhi did, and he would always say, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." He was able
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
stop the entire colonialism movement and kind of kicked out Britain from India by believing that, believing that India could be its own country, and that was just one person. And so, yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. We're all kind of this. It's all networks, it's ecologies of culture, of people, and how they engage with each other, which was what makes culture. And I think that, yeah, I think that you're right. I mean, Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world, is one of those kind of slogans, that's being extracted from his work, but it really is a good one, because it kind of says it starts with you. And like you were saying, how can you productively engage in an individual and a collective goal, that is so that is it's such a huge tension here, like this war, right, that you're sitting in. And um I think that going to the yogic basis is really, what you said, finding that peace and calm, that equanimity, where you're not just reacting. And a lot of the times, if you are just reacting, you will become fearful. And I think that's where, like, the yogic praxis, or the practices of yoga, meditation, for instance, even some asanas, or pranayama, saying mantras, all of this is really part of that kind of deepening, that central channel, that soul essence, in a way, broadening or deepening it, opening it up, and really resting in that as like as a way of knowing yourself in a way that's beyond the ups and downs of and the ebbs and flows of culture and nature in itself. So that's how I would relate to what you're saying. And I also, like, when I was growing up in my early 20s, I became a more of a social activist. My friends and I were becoming, because we were saying, well, we need to participate in this world. Now that we weren't at war, we protested war when the United States went to war. I remember under Bush, but I wasn't sitting in a country that was at war like you. But the question of activism was brought up in my life, and I said, well, I'm growing up. I need to mature into somebody who participates in the world and tries to envision and help create ecologies of that are better than where we are. And
Mhm.
so, but I felt like I burnt out very quickly. And
Mhm.
I felt like went into a depression at one point because I was kind of taking on the burden of how the world was not functioning so well. And I was also kind of growing up and maturing into realizing what dysfunctional place the world really is, because
Mhm.
how the power of money and the power of these politicians, but even more of these corporations who are really running the world now. Um,
Mhm.
so at this point in my life, I burnt out, and which is a common problem with activists, ecological, social activists, any kind of activism. And I looked to India because I said, well, I need to change myself in a way that I can kind of become stable. I can become super stable so that I can withstand whatever the world has for me. And that's where yoga came into my life, and it really did help profoundly in these ways.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm getting to that point. Even I'm like, I'm seeing results. I'm like, okay, okay, things are happening. The troops withdrew from Kherson, and I'm like, okay, maybe this is the beginning of the end. But like, even me, I feel like I took it on, and I feel like I'm kind of going downhill. I'm not at the state that I was in Peru. It's
Mm, well,
like
right.
like,
And
for
and
example, like, okay, we had 3 days of peace, no sirens there because we have, like, incoming rockets into the region, then they blow the siren, and then you don't hear another one for another hour, and then that means when you hear the second one, that means the threat is no longer a threat. They were able to shoot it from the sky. And it's kinda like, "Oh, wow, why do I feel so good? Oh, we didn't have sirens for 3 days, and then again on Wednesday, and then again yesterday, and again today," and it's kinda like, you know it was funny because I ran into this store. I found this store that had Om in front of it, and I was able to find incense from India. And I told him, he's like, and he would that sometimes I go in and out of being in fear and not in fear. And he's like, if you're praying, you won't be scared. And I'm like, you're right. I'm not that.
uh,
There yet where I
it's
could be at peace no matter what. They say like you're a real Buddha if you could meditate both in nature and in Times Square. And I'm like, I know I'm not there yet because I go
yeah,
in
yeah.
and out of it. And it's kind of like you want to be connected to source energy 24/7. And it like when you're connected to the light and source energy, you're continually in a space of harmony, and you're bringing that harmony to earth or to a particular location that is having trouble. But that's not so easy unless you're an enlightened master. And I've realized that.
Yeah, yeah. No, and that's I just wanted to also address that. I mean, you're completely right about being in a more of maybe a safe environment or a simple environment. I'm in terms of like finding that contentment, that inner peace in a place which is like doesn't have the complications of like the really accelerated modern world, like the big Western or any big cities these days. The pace of life is so fast. The kinds of the kinds of people in the world doing so many different things, but being driven to, a lot of times, like, you're in big cities and it's like the drive of money is constantly behind people's motivations, aspirations, behind their moods, and I think that, being in a place like Peru for you, which was a place to kind of rebuild yourself, from what I understand, and take time a little bit outside of the fast-paced, modern world in a way. Not to say it's
Silicon
not modern,
Valley.
but modern in the bad sense, I think that's what I'm trying to say. But I felt the same way in India. In a way, it was like I did create my own kind of a ashram space in a way where I could rebuild myself according to different ideals and different practices, different metaphysics, through raga music and at a certain point, I really felt like I needed to come back to the West to engage in myself as a cross-cultural individual, and to come back to the West and try to engage in what it is that's happening here. And it was a big challenge. I resonate with what you're saying in some ways too, but I think it's even more extreme in your case of having to come in and try to go back into a war zone itself, which is unfathomable for myself. And
Yeah,
sending all of my love all the time to
it's not
everybody there.
easy. I've realized like how how much I think we all take peace for granted until it's I mean, of course, I'm not in the
Mhm.
front lines or the Capitol. It's even more scary in the Capitol, especially when it first began. And we went to go see, like when I first came here, we went to go see the destruction that was there in Bucha, and it's like no one prepares you for that. It's like
Oh,
I I couldn't even understand. Everything was shot up. Schools, medical centers, trees, billboards, gas stations, apartment buildings. It's like, this isn't even a human. Like, how can you sleep at night? It's like, it's
mm,
extremely difficult for me to grasp and even wrap my brain around a person that is okay of doing this much damage. It's like, it really throws you off. And
mm,
it's like, yeah, it's just, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, how can someone do this?
yeah,
And it like, and then I came back to cave and I'm like, look, stay positive. Like I couldn't really get out of it what I saw, and the buildings on fire, cars completely shot up, like 5,000 bullet holes into one car. I'm like, okay, like it's almost like somebody gave them tons and tons of ammo, just like, "Oh, go crazy." And I'm just like, what? Right? Like it's hard for me to imagine Russians being like this. Like I have all sorts of conspiracy theories going on in my brain. I just never
yeah,
thought that it was like this. Like what happened? Russia is our neighbor. Like, and
yeah.
so, um, but then I came back to Kiev, and I was like, you got to think like 95% of the city was spared. They were able to hold the capital, like think positively. Like, yeah, that was pretty rough. And it's really difficult for me to understand war. Very difficult.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, trying to maybe bring things back to that principle of resonance and vibration. Like I was saying, we've developed these senses, our hearing, seeing, touch. Like there's a certain type of way in which we translate these vibrations and make meaning out of the world. And it just seems like the one way to think about the problems is that people are not seeing, they're basically, there's a cutoff when they see their people, and then they stop caring about the other people that are not in their circle or in their country or in their, you know and there's no they can't sense that these are people as well, and maybe you have different views, maybe, but it's like, how can we cultivate a deeper or other new senses so that we can really feel other human beings more deeply across any kind of barriers. We are all human
Right, right. Yeah,
in a sense. So like, how can we perceive that and really deeply feel with love and compassion the other, even if we may not understand or agree with? But it's really like just sitting and talking is there too. But I think that there needs to be an openness to a different type of resonance, like where it's like these world leaders are really kind of enclosed in their own, all of them, like everybody is enclosed in their own interests, and at a certain point it becomes a matter of like, well, how can I increase the resonance with my in crowd at the expense of everybody else? But yeah,
yeah. My friend Wes and I were talking about this yesterday. So yesterday was Veterans Day, but in Canada it's Remembrance Day.
that's
And
right.
my chief from the military, he told me a happy Veterans Day, and I kind of went off. I'm like, well, what's so happy about being a veteran? A lot of people are traumatized. A lot of, you know, I was
Yeah.
I was working at my post in Fort Stewart, and I lost two friends to suicide. I'm like working the gate guard shift at night for the brigade, and FBI agents and CIA agents are rolling in the middle of the night because they're having problems with one of the soldiers, and he's taking it out. And so
Mm,
it's like, and then I was like, well, Remembrance Day is a better term for it. Um, but what was it that I wanted to say? We were saying that, like, for example, for you that went to India, or I've got to travel for the last 2 years, or like my friend Wes who got to travel for 12 years, a lot of us had the ability to break out of the matrix kind of, and not do the same thing every day, and experiment and try different things and discover our like soul's purpose, or do healing with ayahuasca. And a lot
mhm.
of these people that choose to be leaders, they don't have that opportunity, and so they're living in an old paradigm, an old view, instead of, working on bringing in a new earth or ushering in a new earth or thinking differently. They're still living in what earth used to be about, which was about power, and in order to maintain a superpower, you have to be a bully. And so, like, I
Hmm.
think a lot, that's what this war is, a lot of it is about, is America may feel that they're losing their power, or maybe
Hmm.
Russia may feel that they're losing their power, and then now they're getting, or like, or it's NATO, and now they're getting involved into it. And so it's kind of like the leaders have to be changed in order for the conflicts to stop. We need
Yeah.
more conscious
Yeah.
leaders,
Yeah.
conscious leaders. And so, like, we're just waiting for a lot of these old paradigms to kind of like, we took the Jungian course, and so some people are saying, okay, if we are moving into 5D, if we're looking at from a Jungian perspective, all of the earth shadows have to come forward. So like
Hmm.
the pandemic was in the shadows, in the subconscious. These wars are in the
Hmm.
subconscious. And until each person brings out the war mentality in their own body, until each person
Exactly.
believes in peace 100%, we're going to keep seeing war. So, like, it's important for each person to do their work and to, like, think of peace, like, in every cell of their body. And that's the only way we can move forward and get out of this kind of military industrial complex, kind of
Exactly.
thing. And
Yeah. Yeah.
even
Yeah.
even a superpower, the fact that a country can be better than all the other countries. It's kind of like, or a person feels that they're better than all the other people. It's like, no, each country has their talents. Each country has their perspective, and
Yeah.
what they bring to the world, just like each person.
Right, right. Yeah, because yeah, that's really the basis of colonization is the superiority of the European rational subject, white male. And it's that's the logic of colonization, which is not really left us, it's just transposed. It's transposed into kind of like the corporate globalism and um globalization. But yeah, it's really like I think what was coming up for me is this idea of that, yes, we are in a world which is a problem of power in a way. A problem meaning like it's a not only a problem, it's positive and negative, but we are in like when you have relationality, you have a dynamic. There is an ebb and flow of power, whether that's cosmic or natural, like the vital powers. But I think that a lot of the world is based on the paradigm of power over. You want to have power over somebody else or something else, whether it's land, you have power over land by buying the land. Now, can you really actually own a piece of land? According to one perspective, it's not your land to have. It's not any country's land. It's,
Gaia's.
but that's right. And so, but that's how we have all of these ways in which we objectify and then gain power over. And I think that without a metaphysical or like a psychological and metaphysical basis that can help us see things differently, that can help give us other possibilities. For example, in North America here, the indigenous perspectives, as they are coming more to light because people are caring more about the problems of the colonized North America and reconciliation, but also just awareness of indigenous rights, but also indigenous culture. And there's so many beautiful ideas about their like from a metaphysical standpoint, although they wouldn't use that word, for instance, but the idea of their relationship with the earth, relationship with others is based on completely different ideas than what we have inherited from colonial Europe. And I think that's where it becomes more about empowering rather than power over others.
Right, right.
But you can find this in a lot of different cultures. India, we've been speaking a lot about India, so maybe we go back to that. But I think that that's where I initially found these alternative ideas to think about, to think beyond, and it gave me structures and ideas and experiments or like practices to experiment with how to really overcome this problem of like, well, the world is either you are subjugated or you subjugate. Either you have power and you impose your power, or you have to take that power and then impose it back on the person that but that's just a perpetual machine. It's just a perpetual game of despair and of fear. And it's not really, we have to have all alternate goals in that. So how? That's the question here. How? A lot of people in the world, they don't see anything other than outside of that. So
Yeah.
that's a big problem.
Well, it's also like my both of my friends were saying this, both Stefan and Wes, this fear of the scarcity, this like living from when the universe is abundant, even energy, if can be infinite if we use
That's
Nikola Tesla's energy plans. And so there's like this fear of scarcity, fear of lack, and like, oh, we're gonna run out of gas. Okay, we
yeah.
need to go
Hmm.
into Iraq
Hmm.
or Afghanistan, or Ukraine has gas, or and like if we run out of gas, then we don't have power, or like, no, we need to control the rare earth minerals instead of like coming from a mindset of abundance and like, no, we'll be fine. Or if we run out of this mineral, we'll just find another one. And so out of that, we have problems.
Yeah, yeah, and that's so that just one last point on this I would say is important to me is that when you think about power, we can think about it differently. And is it a matter, is it a qualitative sense of power that you are looking for, or a quantitative? And the quantitative, meaning quantity of, or like, which is really the idea of you objectify something and then you can count its quantity, for instance,
Mhm.
um, it's more about what is out there, the quantity. And I think that's where science is a really important important for us to understand the quantity of things. It becomes a little bit harder. Science grapples with problems when it tries to deal with the quality of things, because that's a human experience and it can't be reduced to what is empirically observable. Although we do have transpersonal psychology, and psychology deals with, let's say, the quality of somebody's experience and suffering, for instance, or happiness, trying to deal with that problem. But in terms of power, I think that this idea of power over is a question of quantity. It's over some objects, and you can count its quantity, and then you say, well, I want more. I want more of this. I want to have more power over more people, or more land, or more whatever. When it comes to quality of of experience, for instance, then that idea of power, you're taken into, I think, a more of a spiritual equation, saying that, well, how am I related to the cosmos, or the transcendent, radically infinite potential? How can I cultivate that, and how can I increase the quality, in a sense, to overcome my limitations and exceed myself in a way? And I think that's where that kind of a power is a self-empowering. That's an empower or empowering. And
Mhm.
I think that's also where yoga can help. It's helped me, and I think it's a practice which helps along these lines.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the route we need to go towards. But it's like how, it's I think of just power. I don't know how it's going to happen, because it's kind of like Russia feels that they're powerful because they have gas. Okay, America feels that they're powerful because of their military and because of their hands are in almost every country. And then
Mhm, mhm.
China feels that they're powerful because of all the manufacturing and all the people that they have. And it's like until that falls away, and there's like this
Yeah, 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 yeah.
some sort of cohesive relationship that happens, and more respect for each other instead of competition, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and that idea of how do we cultivate language and practices collectively to increase the power of respect, increase the power of compassion, for instance. These are the questions that I think are really important.
All right. Well, okay. That was like a huge, like we went off the road, and we were talking about gurus. We did a huge, but like it was, probably in the field, probably because of like something that I feel. So that it's good to talk about it.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
going back to the guru relationship, because I mean, what I find so beautiful about it is because it's not about money. It's not about power. or like I know more than you, or I need to get paid. It's more pure. It's more
Hmm.
a transfer of knowledge that we can keep this going, kind of like the 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 knowledge of the Vedas was passed down orally until, I mean, I'm not sure if this is correct, but until they felt that this age of Kali Yuga was coming in forgetfulness, and then they decided to write the text down, like the Rig Veda. I mean, this is
Hmm. Yeah, one idea. Yeah,
one
yeah, yeah.
thought. Like they're like, okay, we need to write this down because the people are going to need it, because there's going to be a lot of forgetfulness, because this age of confusion and conflict is coming. And so that's, I guess that's what I find beautiful is in India, that practice of transfer of knowledge still exists. And so you were getting into it, and so we we went off the road, but
Yeah.
go
No,
back
no,
to
it's great. Sure, sure, yeah. Um, yeah, well, I could say that you brought it up at the very beginning about that idea of um, it's kind of beyond a monetary exchange. And yes, the in North America, the way I grew up in Canada, learning music, I went to New York on multiple occasions as well and learned from like kind of world-class musicians there too at times.
Mm,
There was, in our container, there is a kind of a time equals money. So yes, and if you're going to go and spend time learning from a master musician, then their time is worth something. And it's in our culture, it's money that we equate that with. And
mm,
um, in a way, it's a problem because we were reducing everything to money.
mhm,
Um, but anyway, that's the way that I grew up. And I I had some very important mentors in my life, and I spent countless hours with them at college, and when I was at college as their students, and taking private lessons and whatnot. But I got to a place where I wanted to learn, keep on learning, and keep on growing as a musician. And it was hard to, as a young musician, to afford more lessons, especially in a place like New York, because they were very, very expensive. And I ended up going to India and found that um, it, I was sitting at the feet of a real master musician, and he was so generous with his time. And I did pay my gurus for classes. So it wasn't that um, there wasn't any monetary exchange, but after a certain point of time, it really became much more than I like how much he was offering me and how much I was really devoting myself to the practice of what he was teaching me. It was much more than the money. And it actually entered into, I kind of became part of his family, Shantanu's family.
mhm,
And I was learning sometimes every day with him. I'd go and I would sit in group classes with lots of other students, sometimes younger, sometimes my age. And sometimes I'd have private lessons, just myself or my brother and I, or my friend Justin and my brother and I. But at a certain point, it really became much more traditional in the way in which we were part of his family, the way we were learning. And part of that relationship traditionally in India is that you don't exchange money for training, or talim it's called. You would exchange service in a way. You would serve your guru. And that made a lot of sense to me. And at a certain, like I'm saying, at a certain point, he had given so much, much more than I had paid in money. The equation time equals money didn't actually equal anymore. It became a false equation. And I didn't know how to give back
mm,
what he had given. Now the only way I could give back is just practice and get better at what he's teaching me. In a way, that would be one way to say I respect the time you're giving me by working hard. And my goal is to become as good as I can at this. So that was an equation that made sense. But he actually started to like humbly, but he required assistance, let's say going out doing some errands in the town, or errand, I helping him with his car, or um, simple things, very simple things, little jobs every now and then. And it was, my pleasure to be able to do that.
mhm,
One of my favorite errands that I was trusted with was going to pick up his daughter Mitra from the bus stop, and I would go on my cycle out to the main road about 20 minutes and bring her home, because his schedule didn't allow that, or his family's schedule didn't allow that. And I was very happy to do that. And so there were a lot of people from my Western life who saw this or who heard about this. If I would share that with them, it seemed very odd. They're like, well, this seems very strange. You don't do things like that for other people. Like, really, like what's happening? You're being taken advantage of, or this guru system is all messed up. you know but it didn't feel like that at all to me, and I don't think that was a fair assessment. They didn't know my experience. They didn't know what it was like to be in my position or my guru's position. And
Or
it
how much,
was
yeah, how
hmm,
much he was teaching you.
that's right, yeah. And it was a very beautiful thing. And I think that it's just one, I guess it does stand out in our contemporary world, where people are much more individualistic and much more yeah, that equation of time equals money is a little bit more literal, in a way, a lot more literal. But this is really it's a different system. And I existed like this in India. I lived like this for many, many years. And I really it was a very beautiful thing.
So like in the beginning you paid money, but like later it moved to more, you were kind of like became part of his family. It was like
Yeah.
were you paying the whole 10 years or just
I
or
mean, I was always in a conscious relationship um, yes, with how could I pay my guru back. Now, when I was on a Canadian government grant, I applied for a grant. I had to submit a proposal and a recording. And a lot of people get grants in Canada to better themselves artistically. So to go and study in India, I did get money. And so there was money allotted to me to pay for a teacher.
Mhm.
And that money was happily accepted by my guru, who was to be a raga musician in India is a struggle. It's just like being an artist anywhere. So yes, he appreciated that money, and that helped support his family, and I'm more than happy to pay. There was other times when I didn't have a grant, and I said to my guru, well, I'm going to have to do some more gigs to make money to pay for lessons, but that's fine. That's what life's about. And he said, well, if you don't take that gig, then you can practice more and you can be here learning with me more. So why don't you just pay a little less? That's fine with me. You're going to be immersed in this practice more than having to go out and do commercial work.
Mhm.
So I think that it was always a fluid relationship. And I think that I did my best to always um, offer as much and a little bit more than I could, I could afford. But I think that just being in a conscious relationship was what it was also important between the two of us, just open and transparent. And that's how we arranged it. So
Mhm. Okay, great. Would you like to play some Esraj for us?
sure, yeah. We'll have to break, and I'll set up and tune up, and I'll be back in a sec.
Okay, sounds good because it's yes, I think that's the most we can do today, but we did good. Okay, so we're taking a little break.
Okay.
Then
Are
we'll
you
hear
pausing?
from Esraj. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We're here with Jonathan Kay. He's going to play the Esraj for us a little bit. And the Esraj, he's been learning it comes from India. And he's been learning to play this instrument for the last 12 years now. And only, as Jonathan said, only a handful know how to play the Esraj. It's not an easy instrument. And so that's why this is a treat.
Yeah, thanks, Kat. This is a larger variation or version of the Esraj, which is usually smaller and used in folk music or semi-classical music more commonly, actually. And a guru named Ranidir Roy, who is my guru, Abir Singh Kangura's guru, actually invented this instrument, created a larger version, and he was a maestro of the highest order. And he brought Indian classical raga music onto the Esraj in the most serious of ways, and so I've been learning in that tradition. I'm going to have the accompaniment drone here, which is usually an acoustic instrument. Now it's done on an app, but it's a tanpura. It will be accompanying me. You can hear that in the background. And otherwise, this instrument has 21 strings. It's a bowed instrument. The frets are movable, and so you would move the frets to the positions, and like you can micro tune them accordingly to the raga. And you've got all these sympathetic strings that you tune to the raga as well.
So we didn't go over this, what a raga actually is, and a lot of people don't know. Maybe we should discuss that a little bit, because as far as I know, there's snippets of time, and with the Indian culture, you play certain types of music in the morning versus the evening, and then you said it gets even more specific than that. There's a certain type of music that you play 6:15 p.m. versus 6:30. That's as far as I understand ragas, but I'm sure you know more.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, the time period isn't as specific as that. It's usually 3 hour windows, and in each kind of 3 hour window in the 24-hour day, there will be certain ragas that suit that time of day. And it's adhered in the tradition that you would only play a raga at that kind of day. So let's say a midnight raga, you need to have a concert at midnight to play that raga. And so as part of the tradition, they actually have all night concerts. They have concerts, that run from 9 in the evening all the way till 7 in the morning. And artists will perform all night, and the audience, you stay up all night, and you really get entranced with this music. Its meditative qualities, and you get to hear the ragas that are in the middle of the night. It's more common to go to a concert in the evening this day and age. So the evening ragas are quite well known, for instance. Morning ragas are very beautiful, but again, you have to be going to a concert in the morning. And so in the North Indian tradition, this is unique to the North Indian tradition, that the music is based on specific time of day. It's also based on specific seasons, some of the ragas. So there are springtime ragas and a lot of monsoon ragas, a couple winter ragas, a fall raga. And it's a seasonal. So you're looking at, rather than the time cycle of the 24-hour day, you're looking at the time cycle of the year. And so different ragas depict different a different mythos, a different mythological story, a different natural setting, a different psychology. The ragas are all endowed with these types of experiences and qualities, in a way.
But right now it's 10 p.m. in V's, but in Canada it's almost 3 p.m. Does that mean, are you playing like an afternoon raga in this case?
You know what? I'll cut the difference, and I'm going to play a raga of the early evening, which is
Okay,
right in
go.
between.
We'll meet in the middle.
Exactly. This raga is called Puriya Dhanashri, and a very beautiful raga of the early evening. I'll play an alap and jor, a little jhala, which is the unaccompanied portion of the music, so it's soloistic music. And then I'll end with a little bit of a vocal composition that I'll play on the instrument. But this I learned from my Guruji in Calcutta. And, a quote came up that Debashish brought out in one of his lectures. Debashish Banerjee, the chair of East-West Psychology, in the program that we met. I just wanted, in case the listeners haven't watched the first part of this interview yet. But Debashish brought out a quote of the mother in one of his recent talks, and it was, only when you become conscious of the entire world can you become conscious of the divine. And so this composition reminded me of that quote. And I think that's just in terms of a mantra for everybody to consider. This is one that is very important to me anyway. Mm-hmm. But I'll play in that spirit, and offer this to you, Kat, and everybody in Ukraine right now.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for having me. It's been a real amazing time spent together and in discussion and in meditation and music and absolutely.
Definitely. Thank you. I was like, it's like a private concert. This is so great.
Well, once the spirit of the music takes over, it's hard to determine what's going to happen next. So I played a little longer than I intended, but I hope that's okay.
That's okay. That's okay. And you said there's only 3 people that play the Esraj on stage in the world?
Well, there's 3 gurus of this instrument. 2 of them, 3 main ones that I know of for sure. The center of this instrument is in Shantiniketan, which you've been to, and that's where my guru Abir Singh Kangura lives. And there's a couple other gurus at the university there of Esraj. And there's a lot of people that play the smaller version, but these 3 specific professors are the main ones who teach and are carrying on the tradition of the bigger instrument. And they have a handful of students, some of whom are students still learning, and some of whom would perform on certain stages as well. But there's really not that many people in the world at all, just a handful that would be performing this instrument on a professional stage. So it is a rare instrument.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So hopefully there are Ukrainians or there are other people in the world that get to listen to it. Okay,
Yes.
so I'm gonna turn off recording for now. Thank
Okay,
you,
perfect.
Jonathan. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.